Hey, we're back. A little technical difficulty there before on the Facebook live stream, but we'll start again. This is Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Corners Life, but we have the Ed Hour today, and I'm with host Alan Kaplan.
There it is.
And it's
We're good.
there's a 7 second delay on
Perfect.
these
We
things,
got it. We're
but
live.
we're here. Yes, gotta love it. So by way of introduction, we are in a technology hub here in the city of Peachtree Corners. We're actually doing this podcast from Atlanta Tech Park in the city of Peachtree Corners at Tech Park Atlanta. It's actually along the road of the autonomous vehicle track that's known as Curiosity Lab at Peachtree Corners. It's a place that we have, this area is 5G, Sprint 5G compatible now throughout this whole tech park. And that's the reason why this will be a hub for autonomous vehicles and smart city work through this live living lab, because self-driving cars can come through this place where people are crossing roads, where there's street lights, where everything is an active, real-life community. So look out for those those autonomous vehicles. But we're working out of this podcast room here, and I appreciate Atlanta Tech Park for providing this to us. Alan, tell us a little bit about the Ed Hour.
Sure. Great, Ed, Rico. It's great to be back with you here on the Ed Hour.
It is.
And excited for those of you rejoining us. And if you're viewing our show here for the first time, the purpose of the Ed Hour is to open the doors of our schools to the community, so that the community can see the wonderful things that are happening there, the accomplishments of our teachers, the great things our students are doing, and the wonderful things happening in our schools every day. So glad to be able to bring this back to you.
We have a special guest today, too. A teacher from Paul Duke High School. She's a computer science teacher.
Yes.
She had a great experience during the summer. We'll let her explain that, but this is one of the reasons why she's here, because it ties in so well to Paul Duke High School. So, Beckie Fischer, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you. I was looking online one day because I'm very interested in getting a Raspberry Pi lab going at my school, and I was trying to find some ways that we could do like a coding club with Raspberry Pis. So I found out that they have this competition with Raspberry Pis on the space station, actually, but the competition is only eligible in some countries in Europe. So I was really disappointed that I wasn't able to get involved with that, but they actually do experiments and they run code on these Raspberry Pis on the space station that students do. So in looking into this further, I just, on a whim, it was, close to the deadline to apply for this, and I just said, let me just try this out and let me apply for this NASA experience. And about 2 weeks later, I was accepted, and I was just like beside myself, because apparently there was over 500 applicants and they take 50 each summer. So being a computer science teacher, this was kind of newly open up to computer science teachers. It's usually a lot of more science teachers that are doing it, because they learn about all the ways that the science field is being used in NASA. But they're opening it up more to the math teachers and computer science, and so I got accepted, and I was able to bring back a lot to all the fields at my school, and I actually have some stuff to share with some of the other teachers.
Awesome. Well, Beckie, so we're eager to learn about your experience there. First, we'd like to learn a little bit more about you and leading up to this. So you're a computer science teacher at Paul Duke. Can you tell us a little bit how you got involved in your background in computer science before being at Paul Duke, and just kind of share that with us?
I've always been really good with math and logic, and I wanted to go into computers. I originally went into the Navy out of high school, and I wanted to go into the computer field, but it just wasn't a high-need field at the time. Go figure, in 1993 it wasn't highly sought after, so I had to go in, as a undesignated job. But eventually I got out, and I went back to school and got a degree in computer science, and I was a programmer for a while. I ended up becoming a teacher later in life at age 33. Got into teaching through the alternative program to teach mathematics. I taught math for 11 years, and a couple of years ago, Dr. Weatherington, the principal at Paul Duke, reached out to me and said he needed a computer science teacher, and I was over the moon excited about that. To be able to teach computer science full time was a great opportunity that I couldn't pass up. So here I am, and I love it at Paul Duke.
It's amazing. Jonathan's been able to get quite a few teachers over that are really, really good, and think the students really are making good use of that.
Yes.
In fact, Jonathan was our first guest on the Ed Hour, so we were glad to be able to kick it off with him, and
Yep.
glad to continue to discuss some of the great things that are happening at Paul Duke.
Yeah. So how many? So you're teaching computer science right now. Which, for those people that, what does that mean? You're teaching computer programming? What are
Oh,
you
it's
teaching?
so many fields. We have actually 5 teachers at our school that are certified in computer science education, and that is a certification that's kind of fairly new to Georgia,
Mhm.
and so they're hard to find, but that's one of our main focuses. So we have several pathways. We have cybersecurity, we have game design, we have I teach the AP computer science pathway, so my students are learning mostly the programming. We would like to offer web development and Internet of Things, which is, goes along with the automated cars.
Right.
I also run a VEX Robotics club after school. I'm the sponsor for the VEX Robotics. But there's so much potential as the school grows, because right now it's about, the demand as far as how many students are interested in taking the classes, then we will offer them. But, with the small number of upper level kids at the time,
Right.
we don't have all the offerings, but I expect that we will be able to offer all the fields of computer science.
And when you're talking about programming, I'm just curious, what type of programming, which languages are you teaching?
So there's 2 different AP computer science classes. One is just a general knowledge. They just have to understand the logic, and we teach it with Scratch first, and
Okay.
then we go into some Java. And we have an intro class where we use Scratch and Python. The 3rd level AP computer science class is all Java. They are programming in Java from day one, every single day in class. So there's actually 2 levels of AP computer science now.
Do you see kids continuing on to school after that, like higher level? Do you see kids wanting to it may be too early, but get certified in programming and language and then move right into the field?
I do. I think we've got some kids that are really capable of taking it to that level. And I mean, we haven't had any graduating class yet, so it's
Right.
hard to say.
Sure.
And in the higher level AP computer science class, the one that's the Java, there's only 14 students in there, and I think only 10 of those are seniors. But they all seem like they're very eager to go into computer. Some of them are into the robotics as well, but robotics involves programming too. It involves all the engineering, the physics, and programming. These kids are definitely going somewhere with computer science in some way, or STEM in general.
Yeah. Now, y'all are also, I believe, teaching cybersecurity
Yes.
as well. Can you talk a little bit about that at Paul Duke?
Yes, we have a cybersecurity pathway, and Philip Peavy is teaching that pathway. It's definitely had a big interest this year. There was 4 sections of it because the students were very eager to do it. They also have a competition, Cyber Patriots. They compete to try to find all the vulnerabilities in a system, like all the different systems, Linux, Windows, server. These kids are learning how to safeguard networks and the operating systems, making sure that the users have their strong passwords, and just all the things that they need to know about keeping a system secure. And we have a whole cybersecurity lab that is in the works, and the students will be able to actually try to keep a virtual system secured with, like they have like a home security system set up in there, and they'll be able to make sure that all those pieces are not vulnerable to attacks.
So real
yes.
life applications.
Yes, and there's a real big interest for that. We also have a select few students that are seniors this year that are taking courses with Mercer University and
That's right, the FBI. I think.
yes, along with the FBI, and they're getting 2 college credits this year by working with Mercer, and that's about as much as I can tell you about that. But I know that they are
Right.
doing that on Fridays, and it's pretty tough,
Yes,
pretty
yeah.
rigorous.
You guys also have, Paul Duke also has 3D printers. I'm sure that lots of programming that goes into that as well.
Yes, we have. Oh gosh, we have lots of the. We have laser cutters and lots of printing capabilities. A lot of this equipment is still, in the process of learning how to use it and getting students trained on how to use it. But we definitely have the capabilities to produce a lot of things for the community.
Mhm.
And have y'all had any corporate sponsorships or partnerships with some of these programs, like either cybersecurity or any others, or is that something
I'm not aware of that right now.
It does sound like a good opportunity, though, for
Mhm.
corporations involved in this field,
For
like
sure.
cybersecurity, to be able to engage, as the FBI has,
Yes.
our young minds. And
All sorts of companies. You have Simply Safe out there selling home safety security systems.
Mhm.
Should be a sponsor of a STEM school or program that helps protect from hacking.
Mhm.
All
So-
sorts of IoT type stuff.
so for any of you listening
Yeah.
that are maybe work for some of those companies, maybe spread the word there, because this is the future of your industries being trained here at Paul Duke High School. So would love to see more of those partnerships come into the school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And our students also are required to do internships their senior year. So if any of those companies are looking for, to get some students out there and get trained and get some of that requirement that they need from our school, then
Yeah.
we would love that too.
And I think the way that's being handled is that they're being interviewed, so they're not just corporations can actually interview students to see if they match up with their programs and stuff. Is the way I thought it was being.
I'm
done.
not sure exactly.
So you've been, science is a big thing for you, right?
Mhm.
Are your kids into that too, by the way? Just curious.
I have a son that's 25 and he is a computer programmer.
Okay.
He graduated from Georgia Southern and he was hired by AT&T right out of college. He actually did internships the 2 summers before he graduated. So yeah, it's definitely a field that is hot. I mean, programming and cybersecurity both are highly sought after. I also have a daughter that's a senior. She's in my programming class and she's really, really good at it. But she wants to do early education, so you gotta let your kids do what they want to do.
Sure.
And
Well, it still found its path for you, right?
yeah. She says she'll probably still do like some after-school coding to kind of get the early kids, which I think is important. I mean, kids need to learn the logic of programming at an early age. I think kindergartners can learn how to start coding and just understanding the problem-solving process of it. And, if she got into teaching the early kids, and, I think actually in Georgia they're trying to push it from K through 12
Right.
to have it part of their curriculum to learn some of the standards of computer science, not just programming, but just being technology savvy, being able to understand how to, work your way on a computer and understand how to keep it safe.
Yeah.
And there's
So-
also another thing they're doing too. Instead of language being French or German or Spanish, they're talking about putting computer language as a language.
It is, and that's actually
Right.
what my daughter is
Yeah.
doing.
Okay.
That's her
Nice.
foreign language
Is that
for
her foreign
college.
language?
I mean,
There
for
you
high
go.
school, yeah.
Because really, do we need someone learning, speaking French if they could take that same credit for doing computer programming? I mean, if that's what they want, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and my 4th grader at Peachtree Elementary, he's on the robotics team there, and he's on another team that assists with technology in the school. It's called the SWAT team, Students Working at Technology, or something like
Okay,
that.
okay.
And so I'm glad to see that at the elementary school level, they're doing more today than even 2 years
Oh,
ago
yeah.
in terms of engaging kids in technology, into robotics, and
Well, even doing they're doing PowerPoint presentations. You didn't see
Oh,
that until
yes.
like the end of middle school and high school.
Sure.
They're doing that in elementary school.
my son just showed me one last night,
Did he?
and I was like, son, how do you do this?
Isn't that funny? And then Photoshop, it's amazing.
It is
what,
amazing what they're doing.
It's shifted down. They're learning way more at such a small age.
Yeah, so,
But
Yeah.
well, Becky, so let's maybe get into to your experience here over at NASA. It sounds like an amazing opportunity.
Mhm.
It sounds like it was a very selective program with just 10% of the applicants getting accepted. And as you and I were chatting a little bit earlier, I believe you said traditionally applicants for this program came out of Texas primarily, and there was very few, if any, from Georgia. So kind of tell us a little bit more about ultimately how you had the edge there to get in, and then what your experiences were once you got there.
Yeah, I definitely would like to see more teachers from Georgia to apply for next year because it is absolutely incredible. They treated us pretty much like royalty. I mean, I'm not going to lie, it was exhausting because we were busy from the moment we got there Sunday at lunchtime until Friday night. It was non-stop. I went to bed tired every night. I had to get up early the next morning, but we had breakfast, lunch, and dinner provided every day. We had really nice dinners. It was a grant, so the hotel was paid for, the whole experience was paid for. But being from Georgia, I just had to get my flight paid for. It was way more than I ever expected when I got to meet some of the most incredible people that were involved in the Apollo 11, and I got to meet Fred Hayes. He was one of the astronauts on the famous Apollo 13 that almost didn't make it. He was amazing, and one of the men that was one of the engineers for all the Apollo missions, just giving us his take on being behind the scenes and what it took to make those flights successful. We got to talk with lots of engineers from NASA, and they showed us, we did a lot of cute lessons that, maybe cute's not the right thing, but there are some really neat lessons you can do in your classroom that help you bring home what it is that, the space missions are all about. And, how we are sending robots to Mars and how we can take pictures of Mars and determine if there is like water and if there's wind, and just by the images we were able to decide, was this a volcanic situation, was this wind that caused this. We also did this really fun activity, which one of our science teachers at my school was doing just recently. We had to design these little packages, basically like if you're trying to land a robot on Mars. But you had to build something with just the right weight and design so that we could fly a drone and lay it in a particular location. Because when we send those robots to Mars, we want it to go in a certain location. You got to land it safely. You want it in a particular spot because there's different, places that we want to explore. So in our activity, we not only had to design this package that would land safely, but then we had to fly the drone and land it in that spot, which flying those drones was not my thing. I definitely had to pass that on to my partner, but the building was pretty cool. We basically just did a lot of hands-on interactive activities with the NASA engineers to just help us bring it home to our students so that they understand it better. And I'm definitely happy to share. I have all the lesson plans that we got for the week, and been sharing with some of our science teachers. And then there's also the computer science that goes in with it, as far as we did some makey, these are little devices that you can have interactive touch, and it can, identify parts of something, like parts of a body or whatever. Just really neat little activities to bring home, but mostly being behind the scenes, being at Johnson Space Center, being in the mission control and watching the space station live while sitting in mission control. In the past, apparently, they would take them to the old Apollo mission control, and they would actually get to tour that. But because this was our 50th anniversary, they were remodeling it to look like it used to.
Yeah,
so we didn't get to go to the mission control that they used for the Apollo missions. I was kind of sad by that, but it was also neat that that was the reason that they were doing it.
So of what you learned there, in addition to the lessons, what surprised you, or something that you didn't know about NASA, or something that had occurred?
You're probably
or-
gonna
and
laugh
maybe a
at
couple of
me,
those things.
but I really never thought that going to Mars was really something that was happening. I honestly thought that was a joke that we're trying to go to Mars, but we really are. We are really trying to get to Mars, and I was really surprised by that. I learned about a lot of the strategies that they're looking at and how they're going to put a station that's going to revolve around the moon,
Right.
and then that's going to
The
be like a
gateway.
temporary, refueling and everything, and how long it's going to take to get there. And it was really fascinating, and that I learned about all the different robots that have been placed on Mars and why they're there, and
In fact, I think I think it was yesterday, I saw a news article where they had oxygen levels that were unexpected on Mars. That there was some tests that they had gotten back, and there was a spike in oxygen levels where they didn't expect to see it on Mars. So.
The different landers have different missions too, right? So some of them dig, like the last one, I think they dug into the soil to be able to take samples. But so every mission has a different mission to be able to, different science to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think according to the article, it was the Curiosity rover that found unexplained oxygen on Mars. So hopefully we'll explain it. But so the mystery continues, and hopefully in our lifetime. In fact, did you get an indication if in our lifetime where we thought that?
I mean, if Elon Musk has any, we're gonna be able to go there in about 5 years. So he's already planning a tourism mission to the moon within a year, right? So. I mean, we need more people like Elon Musk.
So, from being there, what's your perspective? Either in one of us being, someone being on the moon in our lifetime, or being on Mars. Did you get?
Apparently, we are going back to the moon in 2024. I think that's the.
Yeah.
Help me do the math here.
Yeah, that's the goal. 2024.
Uh,
This is what Donald Trump set as the mission for NASA program to be.
Yeah, I heard it from some of the engineers at NASA that 2024 is our goal to get back to the moon.
Yeah.
And they actually, I saw it's called the Orion that they've designed, and it's going to be a capsule very similar to what they used to use, I guess, in the Apollo missions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, pyramid, but roundish. But it's going to go and land back in the ocean again, so like the old way. But they have a replica of one in the museum that we went to. Basically, the museum that we went to has all the parts of the International Space Center in there, not put together exactly like the space station, but they have replicas of each compartment so that the astronauts can train and get a feel for what it's like. And so there was the Orion, which I guess that's how you say it, Orion. I may be saying it wrong. But that is
I think
what
you're
they're...
right. Orion.
Okay, that's
Orion.
what... Orion?
Orion is the way you
Okay.
pronounce it.
All right, so yeah, I'm not good with my pronunciations here, but that's the model that they are designing that's going to go back to the moon.
And did they indicate when they thought we would have a man or woman on Mars?
On Mars.
Anyone?
I don't remember hearing an actual...
I'm suspecting it won't be on my lifetime.
I think NASA's mission right now is to get to the moon first. Use
And
the gateway,
the
which is like the
station
space
going.
station that orbits the moon. Get them to land on the moon, and then eventually hop to Mars, which is what 6 or 8 month travel to
Wow.
Mars is what
Wow.
it is, in deep space. So away from our magnetic system of the Earth, so you could be shot blasted with solar wind from the sun and all sorts of nasty stuff going on. But again, if Elon Musk had his way, we'd be there in about 6 years, and to the moon we'd have like the old take the rockets from the 50s sci-fi movies and just land it on the moon like that and take it back off. That's what he wants to do with his Starship.
Well, and so back to our students at Paul Duke and among our other schools, in particular our STEM schools, it'll be, then maybe that generation that in their lifetime sees the reality of today's dreams, so of being on Mars.
With everything going on. I mean, when you spoke to the astronauts, right, the guys that have been out there, And every time I hear an interview from one of them, or I read one of the books from one of the guys, I forget the guy that does the guitar thing. Was he there?
Yes, he was hilarious.
Yes, he's a funny. You got to see some of the
Yes,
YouTube videos with him. What's his name? I can't recall his name right now.
Yes.
He had some really great insight.
He's the one. He was the engineer for the Apollo missions. I can find him. I'm sorry.
There's so many talented people that you would not think. You know, when people stereotype these engineers as white-shirted people, but you know, they're the white shirt, white guy maybe being the
Jerry Woodfill.
Yes, that was the guy, I think. But there's so many talented people. There's such a diversity of people that work for the space program. But did they share any insight with you that things that you might not have realized up in space?
Well, there was one engineer that believes that we are going to be able to find a cure for cancer in space in our lifetime. I don't know how that's exactly happening, but with some of the tests and stuff that they're doing up there, they believe that they will be able to find a cure for cancer in our lifetime. Okay. It was so much information. Like, I was blown away with the things that I learned that I honestly had no idea that was actually going on with NASA. You know, I just thought we were just exploring space. But and then I, learned about the twin that went up in space, and then they compared his.
The two brothers.
Yeah, can't remember his name, but a lot of the teachers that were there had already heard about it. Unfortunately, I had not. But now I've been watching that Mars series on Netflix, and I'm starting to learn more about it now, and it's very interesting.
So they compared the impact to the body, and
and apparently his DNA actually changed.
Wow.
Yeah.
To it was just.
It's almost like
crazy.
Evolution, right? It was evolving to be
Yes,
to be able to stay in space.
Eventually, it was back to normal after a while, but when he first came home, his DNA had actually changed, and it was very interesting the things that they learned from that.
I had not heard that.
He got taller too, but then he shrunk when he arrived back. Well, after a few weeks, he shrunk.
Well, I'm shrinking, but this just due to getting older.
Don't we all?
So, wow.
And I didn't realize that being up in space all that time without the gravity, that when you come back, you can't even walk. That they just pretty much have to carry you off your ship until you can get yourself back to,
And even
standing
clothes,
again
because of the weightlessness. When you're back on Earth, you're feeling the fabric rubbing against your skin. Is supposed to be really more sensitive to that type of thing.
I mean, but the whole evolution piece, that's interesting, right?
Yeah.
You think 1,000 years from now, right? When living elsewhere besides Earth is a reality, whether it be the moon or Mars or wherever else, that if the DNA can change in that short period of time, really how it actually evolves when you're living your whole life in space.
So imagine you go to Mars, you're a colonist, you're there 15 years, and then you come back. Are you a Martian?
Well, there you go.
Does your DNA change? How does that work?
Wow.
So what did you tell your kids? I mean, were you able to share some of that stuff with them? How does that work?
I tried. They, some of them were like, "Oh, wow, that's cool," but I don't think that they realize the impact that it really has to be able to go there and to be behind the scenes with all that. So, I didn't quite get the enthusiasm from the kids as much as I do from most of the adults that found out that I was going.
The rest of us geeks.
Yes.
But were you able to then apply maybe some of the stuff that you learned? I mean, you applied some of it with.
So a lot of the stuff that we learned is really geared more towards the sciences, the physics and the chemistry and some of the engineering classes. So I have shared that stuff. I have a teacher who teaches the earth, or she teaches environmental science, and I was able to share with her the whole lesson plan with being able to identify the images from Mars and matching up what type of weather or whatever might have caused it, land formations. And of course the physics teacher, she was like asking me, she's like, "So we're doing this thing about Mars, is there something that you learned?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, you got to do this drones." And we have a whole drones team, and they go and compete. So one of the guys that's really good with flying the drones is helping her out with, flying the drones for the little pieces that they're building and, trying to get it on the target. There are definitely some more things that I would like to implement in my class, probably more next semester, as far as my computer science class, because the makey, the more hands-on programming, with me being the sponsor for the VEX Robotics, and we also have a FIRST robotics team as well. When I went to the museum with the ISS in there, they have a whole section with replicas of the robots and stuff. And the kid that was giving us a tour was a 20-year-old kid who was on a FIRST robotics team when he was in high school. And he's just interning there. I knew he was so young. I was like, "You're really right out of high school, aren't you?" And then I said, "Did you do robotics in high school?" Because he was like so into these. And he's like, "Yeah, I did FIRST robotics." And they actually have a FIRST robotics set up inside that ISS museum. But he has one of his robots in there on display. It's something that he won a first place prize when he was in high school, like a little spider bot. And so it was neat to talk to this kid who was, just 20 years old, still in college and interning there and giving us the tour. I also met somebody at the neutral buoyancy lab who was also in in his young 20s or whatever. And I was asking him, and he's a scuba diver, and so I'm scuba diver certified too. My husband has done it for like 20 years, and so I went and secretly got certified 3 years ago so that we could do it together. So when we went to the neutral buoyancy lab, I was like, "Oh, this is so cool," because you have all these, like, for every astronaut they have to have 5 scuba divers assigned to each astronaut that goes down there to keep them, just to make sure that, I don't know, just whatever they have to do to make sure. But to even just put the astronauts in there, because the suit itself weighs so much, which is something I didn't realize either, they have to have a crane to put them down into the water. And then they have like a replica of this International Space Center in that big pool. So that was something that I found interesting, that you could just go in there as a scuba diver and be helping the astronauts. My daughter also is she's 17, and she got certified along with me too. So I was like, "Hey, you can go to NASA and help the astronauts."
I'm going to go home today and tell my 9-year-old son, that's in robotics now. So see, you stay with this, and you could be that intern over at NASA or something else. So.
Right.
And I also found out that there were teachers who had done this program, and then they ended up getting hired to go work there. There was one teacher that was giving us a tour, and he had done the program before, and then he got interested, and he applied, and now he's working at NASA. So.
And then I think we talked about this earlier. I think there's one of the graduates of Norcross High School
works for SpaceX.
Exactly.
Yeah, worked for SpaceX. Yeah. She was on the marching band.
Yeah.
I think we did a story on some of where are these kids from the marching band, and that's where she went. She went to SpaceX.
Nice. And I would even say, to any of the students that should happen upon this podcast is just, kind of listen to what you're hearing today, because you're sitting in a classroom at high school now, whether it's Paul Duke or Norcross or another high school, and this is you potentially in just a few years, should you want to go that path. So it's certainly within your reach and your grasp, and it sounds like at Paul Duke and the other schools, there's the tools there to educate you for tomorrow's workforce, to be able to go in that direction if that's what interests you.
I mean, with the things that Beckie has been sharing with us today, I mean, drones, robotics, programming, all that stuff goes into that, right? And then you're talking about, forget about the biodiversity, all the things that go into taking us to the moon and even taking us to Mars, how physically your body can be traumatized in a journey like that. And so biology and medicine, it's all part and parcel. You don't have to be an astronaut or rocket scientist. Did you know that the state of Georgia actually has a spaceport in Camden County that they've tried to, they have a budget there, and we have some sort of, I guess the state has some sort of space bureau or something, but Camden County is trying to be the spaceport of Georgia. It's
Wow.
located near the coast, and they want to be able to get rockets shooting off there. So can you imagine? I mean, every state wants to be able to have their own spaceport and their own space technology.
Sure.
We also have to have like dietitians, you know,
Yeah.
food, horticulture, all that. I mean, because we have to be able to grow plants and grow our own food if we're going to be up there for a long time. So,
And even like you said before, if we're going to find the cure to cancer, how are they going to do that without a biologist, a chemist, or a physician being up there? That's why the crew tends to be a variety of people, right? Military, physicians, biologists, teacher. I think we had a couple of teachers up there at one point. So maybe you could be a teacher going up there.
no, I don't think that's going to be me.
That's not
No.
Not for you. It's exciting up there. I would think it's exciting up there, but
I'd love to do a lot of behind the scenes down here on Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be okay. But no.
did
I'll
they
stay on the
talk?
ground.
Did they talk about what they expect students? What type of students they would like to see?
They want a variety. I mean, they want all kinds of. I mean, so many skill sets that that are involved in the whole thing. I mean, it's all about our way of life. I mean, how we survive. It takes everything. I had there was a slide that I saw recently that I was looking at, and it had all the different job fields that are needed, and it's just so many that you wouldn't even expect that NASA needs. That the list is endless.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's not just scientists.
No.
It's amazing. What you know what you actually did, according to this, you did some augmented reality too. I was going to ask you about that. How was that?
Oh yes,
Do
I
you-
forgot. That was one of my
Yeah.
favorite things. We actually they have this simulated lab where you're trying to. It's called Mission to Moon and Mission to Mars, and it's almost like an escape room kind of situation where everybody has a role, and I was in charge of the robots. Of course, that's the one I picked. And we had to switch. So I was in the command center, and I was having to give directions to the people who were operating the robots on the ship. But you had the people that were, you know, testing this or that, and we had these manuals that we had to follow, and if something happened, we had to look at the manual to see, you know, how to handle that situation. And everything was critical. It was timely. It was intense, but it was fun. I mean, it was like a nice little escape room. And then we had to switch, and the ones who were in the command center ended up on the ship, and then, you know, we swapped roles. And so I got to try to operate these robotic arms to try to do these little test tubes, because there was these things that I can't, you know, you have to use the robotic arms because you have to keep that environment clean. So you're having to do these controls to get these test tubes and do this and that, and it was not easy. And they're giving us instructions on what to do, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, how am I going to get this to work? And but it was fun. It was such a neat team building activity, and yeah, that was probably my favorite part. And I've done a lot of researching on how to do different escape rooms, like digitally and physically. And when I have the time, I want to put one together for my own students to try to bring home the knowledge.
That
Yeah.
would be cool.
Yes.
Put together that. I've been in a couple of escape rooms, and
Yes.
they don't sound fun until you actually get into them, and then you
Mhm.
realize how fun they are.
I've done one that's just a plain digital one, like a website digital breakout, and that was pretty successful. But I've bought some lock boxes and different types of locks, and like the invisible ink with the fluorescent lights, and so I really would like to try to make my own escape room too.
One of the best ways to help make sure a child's learning is to
Yes.
capture their imagination, right, and interest. So,
Yes.
so good job. Well, so it sounds like that the enthusiasm that you gained from being there is really translated back to your classroom and to your students.
Yeah.
So what's next for you? What new experience for you, or is there an opportunity to stay engaged either through some type of programming with NASA? Is there any opportunity to?
They do have a alumni that that I could apply for. I think they go to Florida for the alumni one. But this past summer, I did 2 weeks of professional development here at home, and then I did a professional development in Houston with NASA, and I also did a professional development with Stanford University.
Yeah.
So my summer was really busy this last summer. So I kind of promised my husband that, and plus I got married. We had 2 vacations and I got married. It was a really, really busy summer. It was great and it was fun and I learned so much, but this next summer, I think I'm going to take a break. But I would love to see other teachers apply for it and see more representation from Georgia. The application is currently open. We could probably post the link to the
Yeah, I can share it.
2020.
I can put it into the show notes. On
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
So, and I believe the deadline is March 2nd to apply for the 2020 summer if other teachers are interested in applying.
Plenty of time.
Mm-hmm.
And for those adults that would like to go, or the teenage kids, or even middle school kids, there's something called Space Camp in Florida, in the Orlando-based NASA program. So you can go there for a week and sleep over, and it's run by NASA. It's actually, I'm sorry, in Huntsville, Alabama, at their facilities.
Yeah, actually, my son and I were there for I think just a weekend with Cub Scouts.
Oh, were they? Okay.
So it was a great opportunity, but nothing
I'm sure.
nothing like what you had the opportunity
No.
to experience. You were really behind the scenes. We were just
Yeah.
kind of there with this camp, but what you got to experience there was well beyond answering the question of how do astronauts go to the restroom in space.
Yes.
So the most common
That's
question.
a fun question to ask.
Right. Well, that's the if there's one question I think asked of people.
Question. Everyone
Well,
wants
it
a
is,
potty
but
question.
it's the question I hear asked a lot. If someone's talking about something, I wonder, or if they're asking someone related. That's always the question. But you had so much more insight into what's going on there. So, for example, make the food production. How do they make the food, and what goes into that? And
Yes, and they also, when we went to the food lab, they talked about how they have to try to spice it up because a lot of the food is so flavorless, and these the astronauts just they really want some more flavor, and so they're it's
see,
a lot
there's
that
another
goes into
job.
it.
I would
That's
volunteer
right.
for to be a
That's
food
right.
taster
Huh?
for the food.
Yeah.
And that's
No nut allergies, please.
right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I think a great benefit, again, is you being able to come back, in addition to what you've shared, to be able to share these stories with your students to really engage them and get them interested in the subject areas that you teach that are directly related to your experience.
Yeah.
Any feedback from your students, or what, when you brought this back to your students, what were their reactions and some of what you shared?
I think our students at Paul Duke STEM are just, they're so eager to learn so much. They go above and beyond. Whenever we show them something, they take it, and they have done some amazing stuff. I'm trying to build a Raspberry Pi lab, and I have some kids that come in after school. I actually had a girl that wanted to take one home today.
And explain for those that
I'm sorry.
aren't familiar with computers what Raspberry Pi is.
I'm sorry, I forget about that. Okay, so Raspberry Pi is a small $35 computer. It's all the operating system and storage is on a tiny little SIM card, but it can operate on its own. So if you want to program some Internet of Things, or like a animatronic, or something that you want mechanical to, or lights, or anything that you want to be standalone, but you don't want to have a whole computer hooked up to it, you can program with the Raspberry Pi all kinds of sensors. You can have cameras and lights and motion, and so the students are coming to the lab and learning how they can program it to respond to either a button press or a motion sensor, or, make a buzzer go off if something goes by. I recently got a scanner and a fingerprint scanner, so we're going to learn how to program the fingerprint scanner. But there's so many capabilities with the Raspberry Pi itself, because it's just a tiny little computer that you can connect to Internet of Things to have like a project that doesn't have to have a whole computer with it, and it's relatively inexpensive. So my kids are my students are learning what they can do with this Raspberry Pi and just trying different DIYs that they find on the internet. We recently put together a Google, what do you call it, like a Google Assistant.
Yeah.
It's like a little cardboard one, but it's got the Raspberry Pi inside. It's got a little microphone and speaker, and you can say, "Hey Google," and it responds just like a Google Assistant. And so they actually put this together and made it. And so the girl that wanted to take it home, she took that home today so she could continue playing with it over the Thanksgiving break. But these kids are coming up with some amazing stuff. We have this Grinch production happening. I don't know if y'all have heard about
Grinch,
that.
yeah.
Yes,
The play.
we have our mechatronics that is working with the dance and theater to make it. Honestly, I haven't seen all the behind the scenes yet, but it's going to be fascinating, just the capabilities that we have to explore with things, and the equipment that we have to be able to make things and create and just go beyond their what do you want to call it, their creativity and expertise.
And that's going to be incorporated into the production?
The yes, the Grinch will have some I'm not really sure, honestly. Technical stuff. Yes.
No, but it's great. But I love that, because here you have maybe kids that would be geared just towards the arts, but we're in a STEM school, so it's logical that there should be a strong technology component even in the arts, which you wouldn't typically find. So that intrigues me.
Amazing now with technology is the capability of arts that you can do with technology. It takes the arts to a whole new level now, where you don't have to just have somebody who's really good with their hand. If they just have the creative mind, the technology assistance is unbelievable today.
Well, you know, I mean, it all goes down to scientists like Da Vinci, like Steve Jobs. I mean, if you don't know nature, if you don't know art, it's kind of hard to bring that science to the right place, right, to be used. So it's kind of neat.
Like right now, my students are doing drawings and animations in Java. They're having to do shapes and color, you know, just be able to use the geometry aspect and understand how to do the RGB colors and manipulate the shapes and how to program them to move around the screen. So, you know, it's...
Well, that's the beginning of a game app, you know, at some point, you know, programming that stuff like that. We've reached the end of our time. This has been fun, though. Learning all this stuff.
It's been out of this world.
Yeah. and I like that Raspberry. I thought we would talk about real pie at some point.
I was getting hungry.
But this was cool doing this. You know, I appreciate you coming out, Becky.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Really do, and again, we're just glad to know that you're in our schools and not sitting just behind a computer somewhere for a company, that you're actually sitting at your desk in our schools, giving our children the tools to be the future, and so certainly grateful for that. So.
And it's been good to see you, Alan. It's been a while.
You too,
Good that we
Rico.
were able to do this show.
Absolutely. And we have some other good plans for guests coming up, and
we'll be doing this on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
At least once a month.
Yes.
And Alan has some things going on in his life with his kids and stuff. And we'll be interviewing you actually on Peachtree Corner's Life at some point.
So if I can answer the questions.
At that point. So look forward to Peachtree Corners magazine. That's going to be coming out. It's hitting the post office Friday. So it'll be in homes this weekend and through next week. The cover story is 20 under 20. We asked for nominations of kids that people felt should get recognition for a variety of reasons. And we got 35 plus nominations, I believe, and we picked 20. It was tough to pick those 20. And we have photo shoots and stuff. And we have stories about them. So that's the 8-page pullout in the center of the magazine that's coming out. We also had several other stories in there, some good, strong features. So pick up the publication. If you don't, you should get it in the mail. Every household in the city of Peachtree Corners gets that magazine in the mailbox. But you'll find it at places like Ingles, Dunkin' Donuts, restaurants in town center, in a variety of other places, library and stuff. Every school gets it. So look for that. We are launching a new giveaway too, just so that people know this. Go to livinginpeachtreecorners.com on the 25th, and you'll see the weekend staycation giveaway, $1,000 in prizes to stay at home. Well, stay in the city of Peachtree Corners anyway, and enjoy dinner, maybe a suite at the Hilton, breakfast at First Watch, dinner at Grace 1720. There's a variety of prizes, so
Nice.
look for that.
Nice. Well, again, thank you,
Yep.
Becky. Thanks, Rico. Great to be back with you.
Same here.
All right.
See you guys.
Take care.